Your story begins with shifting between your maternal and paternal relatives. Can you share how you came to live with your extended family until you returned being with your mother at age 12?
Sure. Living with my dad's sister and my cousin, they were much older. That side was what we would call my God side. And everything I knew about church, I learned from that side. And then I remember at some point going back to my mom's side. And I say that because I didn't go to live with her. I just bounced around a lot from people on her side of the family. So I lived with my uncle and his family. I lived with my aunt and her husband, their children. He was very abusive. And to say that it was a traumatic experience, seeing your cousins and your aunt go through the abuse, it was traumatic. And it was there that I learned to just become invisible. I think from the age of maybe like 5 to 12, I lived with her relatives. I lived with two of her friends. I lived with an aunt who was also in an abusive relationship, but she was the fighter. And so from her, it's like, okay, don't you let any man hit you like that. Nobody, you defend yourself. But it was still sad as I think about it as an adult, because there was never any love or security in a home. And so I wondered, like, I didn't feel like my mom or my dad loved me, but I felt like my mom was doing the best that she could to provide for me, even though I never understood why for such a long time I didn't live with her. And when I did come back when I was 12, I felt like it was because my sister needed a babysitter. And by the time I was 21, I had 4 children, had become a product of my environment, and everything I knew about God was gone. As my story would go on, my middle 2 children's father, because I never knew love, he was the one thing that I identified as love. And when he was murdered, I felt like God had taken away the one person.
Yeah.
But that was an immature way of thinking. It wasn't like he was being punished, or I was being punished because I loved him more than I thought I loved God at the time. That was just immature thinking. But it changed my life, and it brought me closer to God, even when I didn't even know that that's what it was doing. So, and I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. Listen, it is your story that brings your strength.
Yeah, it would go on. My mom, I love my mom. I love my dad. I really do. But they were not nurturers. My mom, I remember telling her that I was going to get saved, and she was like, it's not going to last. I was like, hey, I'm going to go to college. She was like, you're not going to be well at that. And so for every good thing, it was a bad thing. And I had this mentality like, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to show you. I got my GED, becoming the first of her children. I have 2 older sisters, first of her children to graduate high school or obtain their GED. I went on to go to college, not because I wanted an education, but because that I needed the money to take care of my children. I had 4 children that I wanted to provide for and to make a change, a positive change in their lives. And so I did that. I went on to get my 2 degrees and would go on to become the first of my grandparents descendants to receive a degree or to buy a home. And so for every naysayer, I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to show you. Sometimes I look back and I can see, starting this process where my identity started to take shape, how I became invisible. And I'm still like this introverted person, because that's what I learned early on, to just be quiet. Don't let anybody hear your voice. Just be silent so you don't have to suffer through those things. Or, when we talk about relational abandonment and, insecurity, those came from having parents who I felt abandoned me. The trauma that I had experienced could be considered abuse.
Yeah.
I never looked at it like that. I just looked at it as a motivation. Yeah, I went through some stuff, but that stuff just made me even more determined to not settle to not become what people said I would become. They said as a single mother of 4, you would never be anything, you would never accomplish anything. But I beat those odds. They said that as a single mother of 4, your children would be on drugs, in the streets, having kids, and that was not their story. All of my children graduated high school. All of my children are doing well. My daughters didn't have teenage babies, neither do my son. I have 2 grandchildren. First one, my daughter was 30 years. Youngest one, my son, who was in the Air Force, was 27 years old by his wife. And so, because I didn't become the stereotype that so many people expected me to be, and it's only because God's hand was on my life, even when I did not know him. So sometimes I get emotional when I think about it, because I know if it had not been for God on my side, I don't know where I would be. I don't know where my children would be. And so I'm thankful that for every struggle I've gone through, God has been there. And he's allowed me to use my voice, even in my emotions, to share my stories, that it may be a blessing to somebody else, to encourage them to be the very best that they know to be. And I say that because sometimes people who should know the best that you should be don't even know it. So it's a journey. Yeah.
And that's because their mom became a superwoman in spite of it all.
Thank
so
you.
I'm so grateful for you and your story.
Thank you.
And I thank you for sharing with us today.
Amen.